Hello, and welcome to Everything Fears, the House of Dread. We're not in the shed today, so today is the House of Dread. I'm Kit Tinsley, host of the Everything Fear podcast. Everything Fear is dedicated to all things horror, so if that's of interest to you, I'll pop a link in the description below. If you enjoy this video, if you could give us a like, subscribe, and tap that bell icon to be notified every time we upload content, that'd be great. Thank you. So this video, we're going to be looking at my personal top 10 haunted house movies of all time. Now this is a personal list. If you agree with me, then great. If not, then let me know in the comments what you would have put in your top 10 list. Number 10, the Amityville Horror. Released in 1979 and directed by Stuart Rosenberg, the film The Amityville Horror tells the story of the Lutz family, who move into the house in Amityville, Long Island, New York, that was previously the scene of a brutal murder where a young man named Ronald DeFreo murdered his entire family. The film is allegedly a true story. The Lutzes claim that they only managed to spend 28 days in the house before they were driven out by all of the supernatural activity. Now, whether the story is true or not, who knows? But as far as a horror film goes, it is a superb haunted house movie. It's genuinely creepy from the get-go. I mean, the opening credits music terrified me for years after I first watched this film. I was only about 11 though, I think. The film stars James Brolin and Margot Kidder as George and Kathy Lutz, and Brolin is superb in this film. His slow descent into madness as George Lutz is taken over by the evil of the house is brilliant and much more subtle than Ryan Reynolds' performance in the remake. Brolin genuinely looks ill as the film progresses, like something dark has got inside him. It's a really great performance. And Rod Steiger, who plays the priest who comes to bless the house, is also fantastic in this film. Who can forget the "get out" scene with the flies? Absolutely amazing. So that's my number 10. At number 9, we have The Others. This film came out in 2001 and was directed by Alejandro Amenabar. And it starred Nicole Kidman and Christopher Eccleston. This film was a game changer. It was horror going back to its gothic roots. It was set just after the First World War, with a mother looking after her 2 children in this big old house, and something strange is haunting them. It's terrorizing them. They're waiting for her husband, the children's father, to come back from the war. And spoiler alert, it turns out that it's actually modern day, and they are the ghosts that are haunting the house, and the people that are terrorizing them are actually people coming to look at the house. Great twist, really atmospheric movie. Number 8, we have a guilty pleasure of mine, the 1999 remake of House on Haunted Hill. This film was directed by William Malone and starred Geoffrey Rush, Famke Janssen, and Ali Larter. It's a great fun horror movie. It's really over the top and of its time. It has a lot of that 90s juddering effect on the ghosts, but it has some genuinely creepy moments, but it's just a good roller coaster of a movie. And as you know, there is a good roller coaster in the movie as well, if you've seen it. Geoffrey Rush is fantastic in this film, channeling Vincent Price in a really wonderfully campy performance. Great film. Great entertainment value. At number 7, we have The Orphanage from 2007, directed by J.A. Bayona. This Spanish film was produced by Guillermo del Toro and tells the story of a woman who grew up in an orphanage, later buying said orphanage and taking her family there. Her son goes missing, and there is something strange haunting the orphanage, and she's trying to solve the mystery of her son's disappearance. This film is incredibly creepy, and for me was the start of the Spanish horror renaissance of the 2000s. But what this film really has at its core is a very emotional story about losing a child, and it has an ending that is an emotional sucker punch. It's both a tragic and happy ending all at the same time. Wonderfully, wonderfully done film. At number 6, we have The Conjuring from 2013. This film was directed by James Wan. It's based off the case notes of famous demonologists and ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren, and stars Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as Ed and Lorraine. The story centres on a family whose new house is haunted by a witch. Has some very creepy moments. Great use of natural sound in this film. There are long scenes without any music to emphasise the tension. It's just the natural room sound, and it's even more creepy for it. Wilson and Farmiga are likeable as Ed and Lorraine. Whatever your feelings are towards the real Ed and Lorraine Warren and what they have done, their film counterparts are very likeable, and of course this film spawned an entire universe of movies, but this one is still the standout of the series so far. Number 5, we have Paranormal Activity 2. Now this film came out in 2010, and it was the follow-up to the hugely successful Paranormal Activity. Now Paranormal Activity was incredibly famous for being made for next to nothing and earning a fortune at the box office. And Paranormal Activity is a good film. It has some great moments, but you can see that the budget was lacking somewhat on this film. Whereas with Paranormal Activity 2, I think that they took everything that was right about the first movie and improved on it and added a lot more tension. This film, the first time I saw it, I must have jumped out of my skin at least 18 times. I was really on edge watching the film, and it remains for me the best of the series. Number 4, we have The Haunting from 1963. Directed by Robert Wise, this film is a classic. This film is a masterpiece of less is more. In this film, we see no ghosts. We rely entirely on sound to create the horror. But how successfully this film creates horror with sound is amazing. The scenes of the banging on the walls is still truly chilling to this day. The film was based on the novel by Shirley Jackson, The Haunting of Hill House, and is a fairly faithful adaptation of that book. For me, The Haunting is the milestone by which all haunted house movies should be measured by. Unfortunately, the 1999 remake, starring Liam Neeson and Catherine Zeta-Jones, didn't live up to the original at all. Instead of not seeing anything and relying on sound, we're now treated to fully CGI ghosts coming out of paintings and things like that. I heard that Wes Craven was originally in line to direct a remake of The Haunting, and I think perhaps if Craven had got the opportunity, we would have seen a better remake. Unfortunately, what we got wasn't great. At number 3, we have Insidious, another entry from James Wan. This film came out in 2010 and starred Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne as a couple whose son slips into some sort of coma, and his life force is attracting ghosts into the house to try and get his life, basically. This was Wan's first really big budget film, and it's superb. The opening credits are amazing. The use of sound in this film is amazing. Some of the best jump scares I've seen. Jump scares are overused in horror now, but when this film came out, Wan really proved he was the master of the jump scare. Standout for me in this film is Lynn Shay as Elise, the psychic who investigates it. And the scene where we first see the lipstick-faced demon is still terrifying to this day. It still makes me jump every time I watch the film, and I know it's coming. Now we get into a difficult part for me, because I had such a tough choice here between these two films. But in the end, I think I made the right decision. At number 2, we have the 1982 Tobe Hooper classic, Poltergeist. Written and produced by Steven Spielberg, this film tells the story of the Freeling family, whose home becomes infested with paranormal activity, and in fact their daughter is taken to another dimension by the poltergeist. The family must come together in order to survive the torment and get their daughter back. Tobe Hooper had already proved himself a master of the horror genre with things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and his adaptation of Salem's Lot. But the mix of Tobe Hooper's horror sensibility with Spielberg's ability to work with child actors and shoot child actors makes for something magical that, to this day, I think is probably the best intro to horror movies for any child interested in horror films. If your kid wants to watch a horror film, let them watch Poltergeist first, but not the remake. It has to be the original 1982 one. So, at number 1, I've put the 1980 Peter Medak film, The Changeling, starring George C. Scott. For me, this film is the perfect haunted house film. It's really slow burn. The terror is notched up ever so slowly in tiny little increments, but it just builds and builds and builds to an almost unbearable fever pitch at the end. Scott is superb in this film as a composer who's recently lost his wife and daughter and taken a job teaching at a university and rented this old stately home that was the birthplace of the local governor. He uncovers, through the haunting, a murder mystery, and the film just plays out brilliantly with some of the most terrifying sequences I've ever seen on film. The scene with the medium in this film and the scene following it where Scott actually listens to the audio recording and picks up on all the things happening in the house is fantastic. If you have never seen The Changeling, please, if you do nothing else from this video, go and watch it. You will not regret it. So that was my list of my top 10 favourite haunted house movies. And as it was movies, I want to make a couple of honourable mentions. I couldn't include TV shows because it was top 10 haunted house movies. So in honourable mentions, I would like to mention Nigel Neal's brilliant The Stone Tape, which was a classic 70s British TV drama that was truly, truly terrifying about a haunted castle. And Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House, from the same source novel as the film at number 4, The Haunting. Flanagan's recent adaptation for Netflix changes the story drastically, but it creates one of the most amazing haunted house tales ever told. The attention to detail in that show is amazing. There are scenes throughout the entire run of the series where there are ghosts in the background you never even see. It's just so cleverly orchestrated and genuinely frightening. Okay, so that was my list. Do you agree? If so, let me know. If not, let me know what you'd have put in your top 10. What's your favourite haunted house film? If you enjoyed this video, if you could please give it a like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. We will notify you every time we upload new content. There are links to all the movies I've mentioned down in the description. If you want to buy them, please use those links. And until next time, stay scared.